Dolphin fans, training camp has finally started, and in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the top 4 storylines for the Miami Dolphins heading into the 2025 season. First and foremost, we have to address the elephant in the room, me wearing a Wyoming shirt. This is not me showing support for Josh Allen. Me and my boys have an online dynasty, and Wyoming's my team, okay? So I want to get that clear right off the rip. Not supporting Wyoming because of Josh Allen. Now, let's get into the real business, talking Miami Dolphins football. Training camp started on Tuesday. We've had a few practices and some cool highlights. I'm not going to necessarily get into all of that today, but it's exciting. There's players making plays on both sides of the ball. The team's looking solid overall. Once again, pads aren't on, but nonetheless, I'm excited for football to start, and hopefully the Dolphins exceed expectations, as I think they will. But into the storylines. I think the number one storyline this year for the Miami Dolphins is going to be the fate of Mike McDaniel and quarterback Tua Tagovailoa. Now, it's been an up and down roller coaster under the Mike McDaniel era for Miami Dolphins. He took the league by storm his first few years. Obviously, year one had the Tua injuries, but had Tua looking like a franchise quarterback. The offense was humming, something the Dolphins hadn't seen in so long. Year two, hit the ground on fire, beat the Bills in week 3, off to a great start. The offense is one of the best in football, struggle against good teams, and have a bunch of injuries and fall apart at the end of the year, and a very disappointing end to a very exciting season. And then obviously last year, Tua gets injured again, up and down year. It's been tumultuous, but I think Mike McDaniel, all things considered, has done a great job. I think a lot of Mike McDaniel's lack of success, obviously there's the culture side of things where I think he's acknowledged he needs to improve. In terms of being an offensive mind, though, I think a lot of his lack of success has come due to Tua getting hurt. And then there's obviously the run game part of it, which once again, I'm hoping he's mentioned that he understands what needs to get done in terms of establishing running the football and being able to win up front more. So if he really sticks to his words, I have a lot of faith in Mike McDaniel in this offense. And then in terms of Tua, once again, I have the utmost confidence in Tua Tagovailoa as a franchise quarterback. With the one question obviously being his health. If the health wasn't in question, which it is, but if it wasn't, I'm very confident in Tua as a person and a player to be our franchise quarterback for the next 10 to 15 years. Unfortunately, the durability issues have been a huge issue when he's missing consistent time year over year. And once again, I think it's a year-by-year basis. If Tua stays healthy this year, I think he's going to have great success. And once again, I think you're going to be convicted in him being the franchise quarterback. But I think it takes one more consistent injury with what he's dealt with in the past, with whether it's the hip or the concussions, where you have to kind of draw the line in the sand and be like, we're moving on. Obviously, ideally, it works out perfectly. Tua stays healthy, this offense hums, and the Dolphins are doing good. And honestly, I think that's a realistic expectation. I really do think this run game is going to improve. And if the run game is humming and it makes it harder for teams to disrupt our passing game because they're less likely to be playing as far back off of the line of scrimmage because they're forced to come in to stop the run, this offense is going to be back to top 5 in football. Once again, that's a big if on making sure we can establish the run and Mike McDaniel actually sticking to the run, because we've had run games before and he's kind of gone away from it. So there's question marks there. But the fate of Mike McDaniel and Tua Tagovailoa is an interesting storyline to watch this season. Now, the second storyline to watch for the Miami Dolphins is this revamped secondary, from the youth movement in the cornerback room to the safety overhaul, with Javon Holland and Jordan Poyer no longer being on the roster. This secondary has been completely overhauled, and the Dolphins are relying on this front to really get after the quarterback to help ease the pain of this youth movement at cornerback. But this is going to be a big thing to watch for this Dolphins team, and the success they have this year. Are their confidence in their ability to develop players and relying on these youth going to pay off, or is it going to come back to bite them? Obviously, it'll be seen. The safety room's been overhauled with the trade of Minkah Fitzpatrick, signings of Ife Melifonwu, as well as Ashton Davis. Ife's a great player, needs to stay healthy. Minkah, obviously a very good player. People won't question him, though. And then you have a bunch of youth at cornerback. Unfortunately, I just saw a report Kader Kohou went down at practice with an injury. Hopefully nothing serious. The Dolphins also went out and signed Jack Jones, which very good player, but also has significant off the field issues and is in Miami. So I don't know how well that's going to work out. I hope it works out well. And then you have obviously Cam Smith, Ethan Bonner, Storm Duck, Isaiah Johnson. I'm blanking on the guy that we drafted out of Florida, but like the Dolphins have a lot of length and athleticism at that cornerback position that needs to be developed. Players that need to be able to know what they're doing, perform at a high level, and be consistent. And are the Dolphins going to be able to get that, or is it going to be a problem all season long? And something to watch. And once again, like if it works, if the Dolphins' ability to develop and go youthful at this position, like you see it with the Rams like a year or two ago when they had low expectations, had a bunch of draft picks, and it worked out. Like it gives you such a huge runway if you're able to hit and develop this young talent that you have money now that you can influx onto the holes of the roster, and you have these guys on cheap contracts for the rest of their rookie deal. So like there's a huge opportunity for this to be obviously a massive success for the Dolphins, but on the flip side of that, it would be a failure. So it's definitely something interesting to watch. And along those same lines is storyline number 3, and that's just the youth movement along the entire roster, not even just cornerback. The Dolphins lost a lot of key veterans: Teron Armstead, Calais Campbell, Jalen Ramsey, and they didn't really do much to replace them with proven veterans. Instead, they're relying on the development of players already on the roster, as well as draft picks and youthful players. So obviously replacing Calais Campbell is going to be Kenneth Grant, Jordan Phillips, Zeke Biggers, that youth movement that they influxed into that position. In terms of the guard position, they went out and got Jonas Anaivaya in the second round, who so far so good, looks very good. Hearing him talk and like talking about how long he's been in the building, he didn't go on vacation because he just wants to continue to learn. Like I'm very confident in that player to have success. To replace Teron Armstead is going to be Patrick Paul. To replace Jalen Ramsey and Kendall Fuller in the cornerback room is everybody that I just mentioned previously. In terms of the safety positions, I wouldn't say there was too much of a youth overhaul, but I do think they have a lot of faith in Patrick McMorris, as well as Dante Trader. And then I would say, I mean, anyone that isn't Jordan Poyer is going to be a little bit youthful. But those are key cornerstones of this roster: interior defensive line, left tackle, cornerback, which instead of trying to go out and replace a veteran loss with a veteran, they're relying on youth. So that's going to, once again, be a big impact on the success of the Dolphins this season. And as I mentioned with the cornerback room, like if you're able to hit, like if the Dolphins, there's a legit possibility the Dolphins find out this year that the left side of their offensive line is going to be at a very high level for the next 5 to 10 years. Like that's a possibility. Obviously, on the flip side of that, it doesn't work out. But like the Dolphins could have their left tackle, left guard for the next 10 years. We could find that out this season. There's something to be hopeful in that, but once again, like they're unproven talent, and it doesn't mean that it's going to hit, and it could backfire, and there's a lot that could go wrong, as Dolphins fans are aware of. But this youth movement was something that was needed for the Dolphins as a team in the past, I would say 2 to 3 years, where they've done a big job of making sure on paper there weren't holes on the roster where you look and you're like, oh, the starters at corner are going to be Kendall Fuller, Jalen Ramsey, Kader Kohu. Where now we don't know. But that gives the young players an opportunity to step up and develop and rise to the occasion. And the last key storyline for the Miami Dolphins is the rebuilding of this team's culture. Obviously, we saw the end of that with the Tyreek Hill press conference at the end of the season last year. Just the turmoil, the inside the building noise that you hear, people criticizing McDaniel on the outside, to what has really been a quiet offseason, but like a quiet, I don't want to say confidence, but like you can tell a flip has been switched between McDaniel and the players and the leaders on this roster of like, the talking is done. We're just working. We're keeping everything internal. Like we're pissed off. We're going to do the extra work. We're going to be gritty, and like the things that people complained about, I think the Dolphins are very aware of. I mean, you see it after practice. They're doing sprints now, which once again, that isn't going to be what determines they have success at the end of the year. But like you could just tell there's a flip switch. The way players are talking, the way things aren't getting leaked as much as previous years, or just there's less noise and attention on the Dolphins, which I think can honestly benefit them. They have a lot less, I feel like, I want to say they have a lot less diva personalities, but we still have a few. But nonetheless, like even the way they're handling their money, where they're being more frugal this year and changing the narrative of like, we gave Tyreek Hill and Jalen Ramsey contract extensions when they had multiple years left on their deals. Like that was stupid. I saw that at the time. I think a lot of people give Chris Greer a lot of flack, and I'm more lenient on him. I think he's done more good than people want to give him credit for. Those contract extensions, I think, were awful. And I think the Dolphins kind of, this year, were able to kind of change that narrative of like, we're not just going to give you money if you ask for it and hold out. We're going to be more tough. Like the Jonnu situation. Love Jonnu, but like I love how they didn't cave to pay a player who's, I don't know, I think he's like 30. He had his best year of his career this past year with the Dolphins and then just wants to get more money, which like that's the player's right to do. But it was also on the team to not have to give in every time like they did with Tyreek and Ramsey and then making it a thing where every player is going to want to do that. Now, in terms of a situation like Zach Sealer, I think Zach Sealer is a guy that you can confidently, even though he has 2 years left on his deal, you can give him an extension because I'm confident Zach Sealer is going to have good football for the next 4 years. And just the player and person he is, like the money is not going to make a difference in how he shows up day in, day out. So, like, that's a situation where, but I just like how they've changed the narrative around this team of like, we're just not going to throw money at you if you complain and cry about it. You're going to like, we're doing what's best for the team. And that's something I've liked seeing from them. And then, yeah, just there's a different intensity. There's a different level of focus. I really think McDaniel's going to emphasize running the football and taking what the defense gives him. I hope. If he doesn't, like, he's probably going to get fired because when teams can play 10 yards off and you can't run the football against them, when you pass the football, they're in the windows that they're projecting you to be in. Nothing's going to be open. That's what the good teams have done against the Dolphins so well, and that's why we've struggled against them, is that they're able to stop the run very easily without putting a lot of resources, and then when you go to pass, they're so far off the ball, and that's why we threw a lot of screens last year, and people were complaining about it, but it's kind of what you have to do. But nonetheless, I do think this team has rebuilt their culture. Obviously, we won't know what that looks like until they face some adversity. Alec Ingold had a great quote of like, culture is what happens when you lose 2 games in a row. Like, how do the Dolphins respond to those tough moments? And once again, I think it's looking good. You could tell there's like a different level of pissed off from the players, but that might not show up in the win column. So I'm interested to see how this revamped culture impacts this year's Miami Dolphins and what this year is going to look like. I'm very excited. There's a lot of excitement around some of these players. Jonah, Kenneth Grant, like there's some excitement. I know people are frustrated with how the past year ended and who we lost in free agency, but I think the Dolphins can surprise. If Tua can stay healthy and we can make those changes on running the football, I think this team can. I can't confidently say this team will win a division until they do it because the Bills just have owned us. I'm going to be real. But if they're able to establish the run and play the kind of defense they did last year and Tua stays healthy, they can make a push for the division, which nobody's giving them the light and day for. Like, I think the Dolphins are probably plus money to even make the playoffs. And I think, like I said, I don't even think that's that big of an ask to be able to establish the run, play good defense, and have Tua be healthy. And if it does, I think the Dolphins can surprise the entire league. So comment your thoughts down below. What storylines are you looking out for the most? Did I miss anything? But I appreciate you guys for watching. Like and subscribe to help the channel grow. And until next time, fins up.